getting caught up on that she might make a mistake, that can be easily fixed to
Right.
become a green.
And that's a great point, because the student data tracking sheet is great, and the big data previously was great, but unless you're knowing exactly what that question is asking, you may not know exactly what that hang up is for the student. What about Algebra 1? What did you all have?
We said yellow.
Okay.
I think the only reason we said yellow is because it fluctuated. I know in my class, I consider you being green, so you can get a 4 3 times in a row.
Okay.
If you can't get a consistent 4, then obviously there's like a mix up there. You're missing up on slope or on y-intercept. So I think we said yellow.
Okay, said yellow.
And
So
then too, you don't know if is it a graph and she's doing slope, or is it give me 2 points and find slope? It's it could be different ways that maybe she's messing up like they were saying too.
So the third critical question of that PLC is what do you do when the student hasn't learned it? And so for the yellow PLCs, that would essentially be your follow-up if we were focused on question 3. So what intervention would you put in place for her to get there? But these are interesting responses. So we have within our math department looking at these numbers just a little bit differently. But how are you as a PLC? Did you come to an agreement relatively easily in terms of what this means as a PLC? Okay. Go
For my kids, they would be green, but I can understand for them, they would be yellow.
Okay.
But if my kids did that, or special needs, absolutely, that would
Okay.
be, I would consider that distinguished for sure. So Dana, I think you probably would agree with that. If your kids scored that would be astronomical,
Okay.
but.
And I'm not going to get to I'm not going to ask the question of assign now a letter grade to it, because that's a whole other can of worms. Let's assign a letter grade to it, but we can get that. But how do we feel about that as a math department? Do we need to have more math conversations in terms of how we look at data tracking and how we look at these numbers? Are we okay just we know what we're doing as a PLC, and that's good enough? Or do we need to look at this broader as a math department?
I think we need to look at the low.
Okay,
How low do you take them?
okay,
Is it a 6, is it a 4, is it a 1, is it a 0, if they don't get it? Because I think that can kind of skew the total. If I'm given a 6 for not knowing how to do it, and you're given a 3
Okay.
for not knowing how to do it, that can totally screw everything up. So there's got to be some sort of a guideline as to what,
Right.
like.
So you bring up a critical point here, that whether you're going down and just talking about Shayna's data tracking sheet, or you're looking at whole school data, of bringing in student work as part of understanding the process of where a student is in the learning. And I think that's a critical component of, we could put something in grade cam and scan it in, but unless we're really dissecting what is going on, we're going to miss some misconceptions in student learning, and we're not going to be reflective enough of our teachers and practices. But when we pull out our proficiency data, and that's the big thing I see from you all in your competency checks, we need to ensure that these things are part of our PLC discussions of how we're looking at whole group data and how we're going down and tracking individual kids. And then, are they red, yellow, green? If they're not green, what are we doing to provide intervention and support for those kids? And again, if there's green, the fourth question is, what do we do once they've already, when they know it, right? And we wish we had more of that problem to deal with. But these are great conversations for us to have as a PLC, because we swap kids all the time and we switch things out. And we have a lot of kids that are in 2 different math classes. And so us calibrating together becomes very important. So here's just some things that we need to be mindful of when we're giving the test administration as well of, do we have norms in terms of how we're giving that proficiency test? Are we leading kids to the right answer? Or are we doing it blind? You know, because that makes a big difference when it comes to the data that we give. We need, as a PLC, we need to come together in terms of how frequently we're looking at those data points. Are we doing it once a week? Is it standards based? How are we doing it? Of course, we have to make sure our assessments are aligned. Part of what we are trying to work on today is getting that understanding of proficiency. What does proficiency look like? And again, the one thing I would say is you just cannot lean on one assessment to determine whether a student is proficient or not. Our PLC should of course be leading to tiered support systems. And again, one of the things, and again, you all are doing a very good job of it here. And we just need to continue to work on it as a school, but is tracking where our kids are on each standard. And these types of things here need to be part of our PLC conversations. And fortunately, those are things that I do see and hear, and I get within your notes. So I'm very appreciative of your work here today. So we have one kind of exit slip here as a PLC, and I'll give you about a minute here, and I want you to think about it, but it's a plus delta here. So with what we talked about over the last 15 to 20 minutes, what have we talked about today that kind of verified what you're doing as a PLC? And the delta is, are there any changes that you think you need to have with your PLC, or any conversations you need to ensure that you're having? I would like somebody in each PLC to write that down. But we're going to do a whole group call out here in 1 minute. So again, what's the plus? What was verified about your work today? And the delta is, what do we need to do? What changes do we need to make going forward?
All right, thanks. Well, I think especially in the last discussion with Delta, I feel like we need to think about more like how we're grading our assessments to make sure that our data looks the same on the board, because sometimes I was thinking about the behavioral assessments. Sometimes we say, oh, well, how did you grade that? Well, I only took off 1 point. Whereas other people are like, oh, I took that one.
Or some people don't go lower than a certain, out of a 10-point scale, some people only go to like 6 or 5, Well, if your kid didn't get the question right, you give them a 4, mine didn't get it right, and I give them a 6. And that continues on eventually.
I always said more failures because we're only getting a 10, 9, 7. So what we can, there's no in between. You got 67. So we can come together.
Right, and I think that's fine for now, but like, I think moving forward, the better we get, I think we need to come to some kind of consensus, so that if they have to switch them, I would even love for us as a school to think about this, because I hate that if 3 in my room is something totally different in your room, which is totally something different in your science, you know what I mean?
I like it, I just don't like the idea of giving a kid like a 6 out of 10 for not.
I know conversations are still going on, but I'm going to cut you short here for time. What I'm going to ask each PLC is just to give me one thing. What's one thing that was verified in one change? One thing that was verified in one change, and hopefully you have more than that on your list today, but that's all we're going to call out today. So for the final time, we'll go with Algebra 1. What was one thing that was verified?
In Algebra 1 PLC, we have frequent data discussion. We're always talking about like checkpoints or proficiencies and how our kids did, and just how to improve their scores and what everybody did differently.
Okay, and what's one change needed?
I think one change we would like to see is, like, I know Jennifer said geometry considers a 3 as a 75. Well, Algebra 1, a 3 is a 90. So maybe like a universal grading scale for 0 through 4.
Okay, all right, that's something we can work on. All right, let's go to Algebra 2. What's 1 plus and 1 delta?
Our conversation was very similar, so I think verified, we do have those discussions about data often, weekly. That's part of our meeting, talking about our last formative assessment and using that to instruct what we're going to do next. I think we do a good job of that, but yeah, changes that need to happen to our PLC. Not only using the same scale, but the same method of grading. Sometimes we realize as we're discussing our data, why something is so high or so low is because one teacher graded something differently than another, taking off only a small percentage as opposed to a large percentage for a certain type of mistake. So
Okay,
getting on the same page with that.
wonderful, thank you. And geometry.
Okay, so verified, we are all doing standard-based grading, and we look at our common assessments for the data. And then our delta was similar to theirs too. We talked about how, like, I do a 4, Ms. K does a 5, she does a 10, and so being more consistent as a PLC or even as a department, because what I grade as a proficient is different than somebody else.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. The great thing about PLCs is they are a continuum. It's a conversation that doesn't end, and I'm very fortunate to work with you all. I mean that I get to sit and listen to your daily conversations in the hallway or in our formal PLCs about critical questions like these. So thank you for your time today, and I look forward to being a part of your PLC and hearing what your work is in the future. So thank you. All right.